Hello and welcome. Welcome to another edition of Atlas Information Live. I'm your host, Attlas, and I'm, as always, very humbled and grateful that you took time out of your Sunday to spend a little time with us. Now, last week, we were talking about facing our demons, facing Satan. And if only I had known how prophetic last week's live stream would be. I suppose on one level, I always know that because on one level, as I've expressed many times, these live streams are as much, if not more, for me than they are for you. This work is for everyone. And the work that I do here is on behalf of everyone. And words cannot express how acutely I experienced what we were talking about last week. By the end of the week, I was in what felt like the ninth circle of hell, facing what had always been this overwhelming, overbearing weight, weighing me down, burdening me, dragging me down like a millstone around my neck, with a chain. And the serendipitous unfolding of events over the past 72 hours, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and now Sunday, have simply, there's really no other way to say it other than I've gone full circle around the alm of life again, down into the depths, and have returned back a truly changed. Not fully changed, not fully transformed, because we know the alm of life it's not one revolution, it's revolution after revolution after revolution after revolution, ascending and descending, Jacob's ladder. But the advancement was miraculous, and it relates directly to today's topic, which I promised you last weekend was going to be about fear and about facing fear specifically. And as you know, I have been very open about this since day one. epileptic condition, depression, and various other facets of my psychology and personality and behavior are under the influence of an entity, for lack of a better word, which is first and foremost defined by fear. And late last week, the universe, God, my divine mother, orchestrated a series of events followed up by a series of long, heartfelt, all-day conversations with two of my closest friends. Because believe it or not, it's not just you all that I talk to. There's other people in my life that I talk to. I know that may be hard to believe. And both of these individuals have a history and a similar childhood history and family dynamic as I do. And both of these individuals are, well, one is 20 years my elder, and the other one is 10 years my elder. And it was a phenomenal opportunity to sit in a beautiful garden with one of them all day in the beautiful sunshine and the fresh air. And he has an absolutely beautiful garden. It's our ecosystem guru. And his garden is amazing. Unfortunately, he's getting old in years, and he has some physical health issues, so he can't really upkeep the garden as well as he would like to. But regardless, it's still an absolutely beautiful space to be. And gardens can be a very healing space, a very healing environment, particularly when they are done at a superlative level. When you have a gardener who, say, knows what they're doing, not just knows what they're doing, but puts their heart and soul into it, and you can tell. And they really, and Wolfgang takes it several steps further. I mean, he can speak to the elemental spirits of the plants, and he just knows, and the stones, even like how he does the rock gardens and all that kind of stuff. He's just on another level, and all of that is reflected and radiates back at you from the garden. Because if you impart and imbue mechanical nature, the inspiration, the energy, the focus, the attention, so that the elemental spirit within that nature can express itself to its fullest potential, its highest potential, it will do so. It will do so. And Wolfgang knows this as a esoteric metaphysical art and science. This is just how he works with living things. And yes, stones are living things. Minerals are living things. And he just knows how to impart that inspiration and that focus and that attention and that care. It's like anyone. It's like when you get the nurturing that you need, when you get the encouragement that you need, and perhaps the resources and tools and other things that you need, and the inspiration to be your best self and accomplish great things, you want to accomplish those great things. You feel it from within now. You've got the support, you've got the encouragement, you've got the love, you've got the care, right? So why wouldn't you want to express your highest self? That's what the Alm of Life is all about. The other thing that Wolfgang has, because he has so many plants and ecosystems and everything throughout his house, in his study, he has a couple of chameleons. And we had to go up into his study to help him with a computer issue. And as we were helping him with the computer issue, one of the branches stretches across the table, and it's one of those study nooks that have like a window, right? So the desk is in front of these big windows, and so these branches stretch across these windows, and that's where the chameleon, or at least this one chameleon, likes to hang out on that branch because it gets a lot of sun. And as you know, cold-blooded creatures, they like to sun themselves. And but because it was a beautiful blue sky, all the pigmentation on this chameleon had gone sky blue, like baby blue, and it was just some like pink and some other flecks of orange and pink and other things there to, like, I guess, break up the monotony. He wasn't entirely blue. I really should have gotten a picture. I really should have taken a photo. But remember, I'm the type of person to be in the moment. And when I'm in the moment, I'm in the moment. I'm not thinking about capturing the moment. I'm not desperate to, capture it for the sake of posterity or whatever. In retrospect, I should have, because it would have come in handy right now to show you that. But in any case, in the course of my conversations with Wolfgang and my conversations with my other friend and another friend who lives in the Middle East, he's also like a brother to me, like a soul brother. This is my soul family. We all have soul families, these people that are not, they're not maternal, paternal family. But when we are with them, our soul feels like we're at home, that we're with family. We all have friends like that, or at least we should. We should all cultivate. We don't need many friends, honestly. But the small number of friends we do have, let them be a friend to our soul, to our true self. And let us be a friend to them and their true self. That's true friendship. True friendship is not acquaintances and chemistry between personalities. Very often, our soul family, there can be clashes of personality. There can be clashes on the surface level. But we always keep coming back to them, and they always keep coming back to us, and they're always there for us because the bond that we have with them is heart to heart. It's much deeper. And it's probably a bond that we have had with them for many lifetimes. There's a couple of quick comments. Let's get them out of the way and before we continue on here. Benjamin says, "Hi, Atlas. Hope it's not going so bad with the anxiety. I know I could never speak publicly like you do." And Lux Custos says, "Hi, Atlas. We are listening to your live stream whilst we take on a 12-hour night shift. It is always easier when listening to talks about the inner path of gnosis." If you have a job that allows you to listen, and if you're at work, in other words, you can be listening about doing the work. The real work, the work we're all here to do. Tiffany chimes in and she says, "Good morning. Beautiful opening today." Well, thank you, Tiffany. It's beautiful to have you here. And so those beautiful, we always have short but beautiful words to share. It's much appreciated. Appreciate that a lot. So, fear. Last week we said facing Satan, and we promised we would be talking about facing fear. And if we put two and two together, and that lengthy intro that I just gave you, you know that that's exactly what I was facing in a big way. And it is really, it'll be really useful to consider the character that I chose for the thumbnail for today's live stream. Let's see if I can get it on screen here. Let's see if we can do this. So this is how I do the. If I make it big, is it going to go to the right screen? No. Hang on. If I make it full screen, is it going to go? Yeah, there it is. Okay. So if you don't know who this is Rango. If you've never seen this movie, it's an animated children's movie from, gosh, it has to be, at least a decade ago, if not more. It was done by Nickelodeon. And so it's not a Pixar production. It's not Pixar, it's not DreamWorks, and it's not Illumination. So those are the usual suspects when it comes to full-length computer animated films. This one was done by Nickelodeon, and it stars Johnny Depp as Rango. And Rango is a chameleon. He's not just a chameleon, but he's a wannabe thespian. He's a wannabe actor. And he is a 100% domesticated pet. He's somebody's pet. And he has a terrarium that he's in, and there are all sorts of like little plastic toys and things of that nature, like a doll and some other things. And he does like Shakespearean plays to himself, but he sets up like plastic dolls and whatnot as like a little audience. And so he dreams himself to be an actor, but he also dreams himself to be an actor in like Westerns and stuff like that. And so he lives in a fantasy world, his own little fantasy world. And in the process of moving, I guess, out of California, or like from California to New York, or wherever, however the story goes, he's trucking along, and his enclosure falls out of the truck in the middle of the wide open desert. And the adventure, the movie, sort of goes from there. I always liked Rango. I always liked the film. I think it was always underrated. It has a lot of humor in it that hits on both for children and for, I would say, young adults, and also for us older adults, because there's some things in there like references to classical Westerns, classical Clint Eastwood, and that golden era of Westerns. There's a lot of throwbacks to that era of Hollywood. But then also the fact that Rango being a chameleon, but he wants to be an actor, and so he's playing the part of a hero, and he's absolutely in over his depth, right? But all of the other characters are also animals. And there's this, he stumbles upon this town, and there's like these pseudo spiritual guides that also like meet him in the desert. And it's kind of it has mystical elements, it has spiritual elements, it has classical tropes of Westerns, but also of mythological heroes' journeys and stuff. So it's very, I wouldn't say it's highbrow, and I wouldn't say that it's enough to go over anybody's head, and it's not pretentious. It's light, it's fun, it's irreverent at times, it's sarcastic at times, it's playful, but it's also witty, but it's not pretentious. And perhaps the reason why it didn't do well is because maybe it was just a tad above where average audiences are. But suffice it to say, like all heroes or tragic heroes, but regular heroes as well, Rango has a bugaboo. He has a flaw. He has a millstone tied around his neck. Like all actors, or many, not all, we shouldn't say all, but like many performers, he has self-esteem issues and he's looking for validation. That's why else would you want to become an actor, right? And Johnny Depp plays this anxiety, this fear, and then he's thrown into circumstances where anybody thrown into those circumstances would rightfully be terrorized by their fear. I mean, he has to face off against characters like Jake the Snake, and we're not talking about Jake the Snake Roberts from wrestling, but he's a rattlesnake. And because it's a Western, he's a rattlesnake, but instead of a rattle, he has a minigun. He has one of those World War I miniguns, the ones that you crank, but he has it in his rattle on his tail. And there are, buzzards and crows and all these other animals that really do fit the characters of the parts that they're playing in this crazy fantasy world Western that Johnny Depp and his, I mean, just look at the illustration, just look at his face. This is not the face of your prototypical confidence-inspiring, swashbuckling hero. This is not the face of Clint Eastwood. This is not the face of John Wayne. This is not the face of Charlton Heston, right? The brawny, muscular, hairy-chested, tough guys from that era of cinema, right? The golden age of Western. This is not that, right down to the Hawaiian shirt. And the characterization and the way that he's animated, the way that he's voice acted, the writing and everything, it really is a wonderful little modern day kind of mythological, fun, animated story about a character facing his anxiety, facing his fear. But it's fun. It's lighthearted. Look at that chameleon's neck. Look at Rango's neck there. You can't tie a millstone around that neck. And one of the tremendous comprehensions that came to me over the last 72 hours of diving deep into hell and then not climbing. I didn't have to climb my way out. I didn't have to crawl out of hell. I didn't have to, with getting coal and brimstone and stuff like under my fingernails as I crawled out of hell or whatever. No, it was nothing like that. I floated up out of hell. I'm not free of anything except the millstone that I had shackled around my neck. And I am an actor. I trained to be an actor. I wanted to be an actor. I didn't go into acting for validation. I didn't go into acting because I wanted attention. I went into acting because I wanted to be able to move others the way I was moved by beautiful works of art, by beautiful performances, by incredible dialogue, by incredible stories that are uplifting, stories that When I saw them, I felt as though I was being touched by the hand of God. I wanted to be able to do that. I wanted to be able to touch people. And I thought that the best way to do that would be to assume the vocation that, number one, I was pretty good at. I was definitely good with the language. I could read Shakespeare aloud, usually after one reading, and perform it, and it just came naturally to me. Like it really did. Performing came naturally to me. And I knew that it would play a role in my life, a significant role. But except when I was doing improv. When I was doing improv, I was having fun, carefree. It takes a certain type of somebody to get up in front of an audience with no script, nothing memorized. And I could do it alone. I could improvise monologues. Now, if you really think about it, that's what I do every Sunday for 2, 3, or 4 hours, right? None of this is scripted. None of this is planned. You know what I have planned? What you see there and what I write in the description. This is everything that I had planned for today. Is this chameleon, this mug, this caricature staring at you with whose face is, come on, you got to admit, it's like the computer animated embodiment of anxiety. I mean, look at the poor guy. And you want to talk about having a spine, right? Like people talk about growing a spine and growing some backbone. Look at this poor guy. his head and his eyes, and somehow, the eyes are the window to the soul. But if you've seen a chameleon, these are actually very, very accurate to chameleon's eyes, because they're these orbital. Number one, they're bidirectional. They can focus, like they're like little turrets, and they can look in completely different directions. But they really do have these tiny, tiny little lenses and these enormous like turrets. And something about that gives them, like if you know about photography, you know that you reduce the aperture, and by reducing the aperture on the lens, you get incredible depth of field. And these guys need tremendous depth of field because, of course, chameleons are hunters. They're carnivores. I mean, they'll also eat fruit and other things. So I guess technically they're omnivores, but their preference are things like live crickets and such. Like it's live insects. That's their thing. And they have this tongue that they shoot out. And so they use their eyes, like one eye on one side of their head, it's like looking for predators, watching for predators. And then the other eye is watching for prey. And they're constantly looking, and they can move fast if they want to, but they prefer to move really slow. And they use camouflage. That's why they have that ability to change their colors and blend into the background. So they're masters of disguise. And it's natural that if you wanted to make a story about a fledgling wannabe actor who's thrown into this comedy of errors where he has to take on or pretend to be a real cowboy, a real tough guy cowboy, well then, wouldn't it be great to have this anxiety-ridden, unsure of himself, insecure chameleon, right? To go through this. And so, but the story is fun. It's lighthearted. There are scary moments. There are serious moments. And it's a very heartfelt film. And the subject matter is actually very serious. There's actually a real social issue that's being tackled over the course of of the film. It's talking about very real issues, especially in desert towns, especially in the United States, in the Midwest. And the issue, particularly like the social issue or environmental issue, is water and access to water. And there's this corrupt public official involved, and the other citizens, and the towns looking for the wandering hero, right? The drifter, the wandering drifter, that great Western trope, who just wanders into town one day, and he's not a hero, he's an anti-hero, but somehow, one way or another, he gets tangled up in the drama that the townsfolk are facing, the crisis, and he takes on the challenge. He accepts the challenge, or he fumbles and bumbles into it because he's trying to pretend he's something he's not, because he's insecure about himself, and he's looking for validation. He's looking for others to affirm something positive about him so he can feel better about himself. That's what it means to be insecure, and that's what it means to seek validation, as many performers do. And as this Johnny Depp plays this brilliantly, and it's animated and everything well, and this facial expressions, it's all, I don't know if they used motion capture on the facial expressions, but the comedic takes and the timing, like for animation, it's not quite as good as, let's say, Chuck Jones and Fritz Freleng. They were the directors of Looney Tunes cartoons. So it's maybe not quite that sharp, but it's really, really good. The breaking of the fourth wall, when a character does, when the character looks into the camera lens, like when Daffy Duck or whatever looks into the camera lens and then shares a moment of disgust or a joke or whatever with the audience. That's what we call breaking the fourth wall. That's what Deadpool does all the time in his movies. But there's an art to doing that well in animation. Nobody did it better than Chuck Jones and Fritz Freleng. And Jim Henson also did it really well with the Muppets. And this film does it really well with Rango and some of the other characters. And again, it's important because it's animation. We want to maintain the connection with the audience. We want to make sure that the audience remains involved and that they can identify with the suffering and the struggle of the hero. And this hero is facing his fear, his insecurities, his anxieties, his need for validation, and even to one degree or another, his need for control. His need to control his image, his desire to control his reputation and how others see him, and the narrative that he is concocting and spreading around this mysterious drifter cowboy persona that he's pretending to be. So coming back to my own experience in the theater and doing improv shows, you can't be afraid to get up on stage with no script and only some trusted friends and colleagues who you can play ping pong with. You know that you can serve them something, a look, a thought. You can just shoot them some energy and bang, they're going to get it. And they're going to yes, and they're going to grab it and they're going to run with it, or they're going to send it right back to you. And you get that rapport going, you get that back and forth going. There's a lot of trust. There's a lot of not caring if you screw it up. There's a lot of, you got to be okay with falling down. It's like figure skating, which is the sport that I did. You can't learn how to figure skate if you're not comfortable with falling on your ass. You cannot be afraid of falling, in other words, to learn figure skating. It's impossible to become a figure skater and not become intimately connected with the with the flatness of the ice and the coldness of the ice, and you get to know that intimately, usually through your gluteus maximus. But then there's also knees and thighs and hips and elbows and all kinds of stuff, and unfortunately wrists. And there's been more than one figure skater that you'll see walking around with like wrist braces and casts around their hand because they broke their hand falling, and they unfortunately tried to stop themselves with their hand. Not a good idea, generally speaking. But that's the first thing you do when you learn to figure skate. It's the first thing you do is you learn how to fall. So I guess it's because of that I was never afraid of getting up on stage and having fun and being carefree with improv, because I wasn't afraid of falling. I wasn't afraid of falling flat on my face. You can't be a public speaker. You can't be a performer, really, if you're afraid of failing, if you're afraid of bombing. It's like to be a stand-up comic. I'm sure that stand-up comedians will tell you, you got to get over that fear. You got to fight through that fear that they won't laugh, that they'll boo you off the stage, or that you'll have a heckler or whatever. So all performers face this in their own way. And some performers, who was it? Was it Elton John, or I can't remember which musician it was, performer, but he publicly admitted that he would need a bucket backstage before he went out on his concert, because he needed a bucket to throw up in, because he got such stage fright. And everyone who performs, really, we all face that. Yes, we all have that feeling where we're looking at something and we say, that's amazing. That's amazing. So here we go. Here we go. Okay. All right. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. 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 Hello, everyone. I'm back. I think I went away for a while. I apologize for that. As you can see, I'm not out of the woods yet. You guys just experienced what it's like living with what I'm living with. I don't know how long I've been out, but it's got to be at least 20 minutes, half an hour. Lux Custos asked a question. He said, Atlas, did you ever have seizures while you were on stage in the middle of acting? Not to my knowledge, no. God bless you, and may your divine mother one day liberate you from that demon. Thank you for the transparency. Well, now you know the answer to that, Lux Custos. You can say I just had one. I was here, but I wasn't all here. I went away. So you guys got to see what it's like. And Tiffany says, you're like Led Zeppelin. You can't strike a bad pose. Benjamin gave us a smile and an angel smile and a thumbs up. And Tiffany says, ha, ha, ha. And the peeps I invited today. Oh, snap. Tiffany says, okay, I retract my statements. I see you now, brother. My apologies. You were talking about acting, and then I left the room. So did I. Physically, I was still here, but I was somewhere else. I was lost in talking about Rango. As Azel says, a bit late, but I'm here now. Yeah, you missed the excitement. You missed the big seizure. So the difference might be that I would normally allow something like this to get to me, to really weigh me down. I would feel ashamed. I would feel defeated. But I don't, because that's just, we don't exactly want to use the expression making a mountain out of a molehill, but it's definitely not making anything better. It's making things 10 times worse. So sure, I'm at the mercy of something, and I never know when it's going to strike. I'm like a bug, and this chameleon is hidden somewhere, and he's a master of disguise. And all of a sudden, bang, and he's got me, right? Like a chameleon's tongue, that sticky tongue. That chameleon shoots out and grabs his prey, and that's it. That prey is done. And he never saw it coming, because the chameleon is a master of disguise. And that's fear. You never know when it's going to strike, or how it's going to strike, and from where it strikes. But catch us off guard, it does. Taking advantage of our weakness, of our vulnerability, of our being on uneven ground, or having lost our footing. That fear, that chameleon sits and waits patiently, camouflaging itself, blending into the background of our psychology, into the background of our subconscious mind, into the background of expectations and demands and in that sense, like all illusionists, like all who use camouflage and distraction and illusion and other techniques to remain unseen and to gain a position of superiority, to gain an advantage over us, an advantage that they absolutely intend to exploit and that they will exploit if given an opportunity. And knowing that, experiencing that, being on the receiving end of that, time and time again, year after year after year, it can weigh very heavily on someone. Tiffany Millerbis says, I didn't understand what was happening when I joined you all again. If you joined, when I think you joined, I was in the middle of having a seizure. And I'm not even sure what was going on. I wasn't here. Physically, I was here, but I was elsewhere. And it's disconcerting to live your life in such a way when, at any given moment, something comes and takes your place, like shoves you out of the way and takes over your body. And it's a real phenomenon. But equally real is the mistake of giving that entity and giving that phenomenon more power than it deserves and making it worse on myself. Do you remember it was during the Second World War, Franklin Delano Roosevelt went on national television and he had his famous speech in which he said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." And this sentiment was upheld by the United States, by the nationals, by the warmongers, by the nationalists, and by all the patriots as a great battle cry, a great war cry against the forces of evil, against Nazism and imperialism, against the Empire of Japan, and how the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The only thing that is holding us back is our fear. And so we have no reason to be afraid other than we need to be afraid of fear holding us back. That's the only fear that matters. And it's clever in an intellectual level where it says, don't be afraid. You have no reason to be afraid. It's fear itself. Fear is the only thing that's worthy of being afraid of. So there's a cleverness to it. There's a wisdom to it, except that it misses the point. If you allow yourself to be afraid of your own fear, you've lost the battle before it's begun. How can you observe your fear objectively if you're afraid of it? When you see it, you'll be afraid of it. How can you observe it objectively? How can you resist its temptations? if you're afraid of it. It doesn't have to tempt you. You've already given in. So you might be able to resist being tempted by fear with regards to something else outside of you. But if you're afraid of fear, fear already has you in its grasp. So that line, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. That line is a great lie, a great scam. It sounds clever, it sounds profound, but it's exactly the opposite of how you face fear. You can't defeat fear by being afraid of it. It's self-evident. You can feel your fear and observe your fear and know intimately how it grips you, how it grips your thoughts, how it grips your emotions. And in my case, how it possesses my physical body and grips my physical body. And you guys, you've witnessed that here today. Tiffany says, I gently encourage you to go back at some point and see what happened. And yeah, I'll definitely do so. I'll have an opportunity to do so for sure. That's one of the benefits of having these things recorded. And Benjamin says, there's nothing scarier than the dark side of any part of the work or path. In a sense, what all of us face, even Master Samael talked about this. He said the greatest ego that he ever faced, that he ever had to overcome, was the ego of fear. And the reason for that is that the path is a path of psychological death. The path is a path of transformation. The path is a path of letting go and letting God. And in many ways, and this is one of the great comprehensions that I had in the last few days, it's a path of dancing with the devil. Now that's a pejorative term, but you could say dancing in the dark. So when Benjamin says the dark side of the path or the dark side of the work, there's that Bruce Springsteen song that talks about dancing in the dark. We have to dance with that darkness. We have to accommodate and engage with that which can transform us. But we don't want to do that because we're identified and we're attached to precisely that which needs to die, to precisely that which is in need of transformation. But if we're identified with it and we're attached to it, we can't let it go. We're afraid to let it go. We're terrified of letting it go. And what makes us terrified of letting it go is precisely what we're talking about here today. It's precisely what makes our friend Rango here look the way he does. It's fear. But fear needs to die. But fear does not go quietly into the night. I'll give you an inside scoop. You seeing me have a seizure here live, I should also tell you that I had a seizure earlier today, earlier this morning. Oftentimes, I have said that as we do the work, and we make progress, we make headway on the path, you have often heard me say that egos fight back. They do not go quietly into the night. And making progress on one level and ascending to the next level simply means that now, when the next time we descend, we need to face ourselves, our darkness, our shadow, at a whole new level, at a whole new depth. And you've also heard me talk about this many times. The Dungeons and Dragons or the role-playing game or video game motif, or as your character goes up and up and up and up and up, you have to descend deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the dungeon. And that's, behind us, the Alm of Life. Every revolution of the Alm of Life, you go higher, but then you got to go lower, and then you come back higher and go lower and higher and lower, and it expands out and grows. And with every revolution, you're getting stronger, you're getting better, your character is transforming and increasing in level, right? And is being transformed from a neophyte initiate mage, let's say, to a powerful sorcerer or a powerful magician, if that's the class that you're chosen. Or you start out as a squire, but then you end up later in the game as a master knight or a master paladin or a swordsman or some other fighter or a ranger or whatever class you've chosen. But you start out as a neophyte, with a little pea shooter, and you're fighting giant rats and things like that, and spiders and rats and things like that. And then by the end of the game, you're fighting dragons and who knows what. So it's never good to become complacent or naive or believing that just because we made progress on the path, that things are going to get any easier. On the contrary, things are going to get harder. We might not want to hear that. But ask someone who climbs Mount Everest if it gets easier the higher you climb Mount Everest. And they will tell you there's nothing easy about it, but also that the hardest climb, the hardest aspect of climbing Everest is the closer you get to the top. It's summiting the peak that's the hardest. And that's the case with many, many endeavors. And in many ways, it's at the peak, it's near the summit, that the mountain and the weather and the cold and the aching bones, the failing endurance of the physical body and the failing mental endurance, where all of that starts compounding itself. It's at the summit or approaching the summit that the forces set against us, the adversary, the opposition, are strongest. And if the threats to our success and the threats to our person, where the threats are the strongest, there too our fear will be the strongest, will be the greatest. And this is important to know. We can't afford to be naive. We can't afford to say, well, I made a lot of progress, so therefore I'm free and clear of A, B, C, X, Y, Z. Clearly, I am not. Doesn't mean that I give up, and it doesn't mean that I allow myself to throw myself into a pit of despair. That's not the answer either. So what is the answer? Well, the first thing is we have to see it for what it is. It is what it is. At the moment, it's just an acceptance and an acknowledgement that, okay, it looks like I'm going another round at an even deeper level, at and facing this thing at an even deeper level, a higher level. That's not a reason to become discouraged. That's actually a reason for encouragement. When you play a game of chess and you finish what's called the opening, you end up in what we call the middle game. Entering the middle game is not an invitation to break down in despair because we're no longer in the opening. The middle game is where things can get really complicated and convoluted. And the middle game is, some people say, most chess matches are won or lost in the opening. And there's truth to that. But really, it's the middle game where all the big action happens. And then following the middle game, you have the end game. And if you if you find yourself in the end game, again, it's you've gotten over another hurdle, another round of the Alm of Life, of the Alm of Chess, and now you're in the end game. And the end game is very different again from the opening and the middle game. It's like a completely different game. Obviously, the pieces are the same, the movements are the same, but the strategies and the goals and how you go about doing them, it's in that sense, it's a completely different game. But it's not an invitation to fall into despair or to fall into fear because you don't have as many pieces now as you did at the beginning, or whatever the case may be. It's just a new challenge, and it could be a more difficult challenge, but it's a challenge nonetheless, and it's one we have to make ourselves available to. We have to avail ourselves of all of our faculties, and specifically our higher faculties, and face that challenge. We have to overcome our fear of facing that challenge. And as part of that, we have to overcome our need to be in control. Tiffany says, please, let's none of us give up ever. It's a worthwhile plea, it's a noble request, and it's a worthwhile cause. But fear is that, fear is this actor, this wannabe, this chameleon, the great pretender. He's a terrorist, and he's a con artist. He'll pass himself off as whatever he can to have his way with us, to get what he wants from us, which is control. And I am the living embodiment of that. There's another character in Rango. And her name is Beans. And she is, I believe she's supposed to be a newt. I think she's a newt. And what happens is when she's terrified, she freezes, right? There's like 4 states of fear in nature. There's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Now, all 4 of those are explored in the movie in Rango because fight or flight, I think it's pretty straightforward. Our hero is either fighting the villains or the other characters, or fighting the circumstances, or he's running away from whatever circumstances he's facing. But the other aspect, freeze or fawn. Let's see if I can get this here. Doesn't want to. Oops. So this character, let's see if we can do this again. Let's try this again. Okay. Yeah, not the best, but we'll work with it. Let's show you this. So this character in the bottom left here, that's Beans. And she's a lizard or a newt or whatever she is. I'm not exactly clear what kind of a reptile she is, but she freezes. She goes like catatonic and like goes stiff as a board, and her eyes are completely wide open and mesmerized, and like a deer in headlights. That's her thing. That's her character foible or flaw. And suffice it to say, she would you call her a love interest for Rango? She's the heroine of the story. She's a member of the village, and but she's no slouch and she's no weakling. In fact, there's a scene here where she shoves a shotgun in Rango's face because she's here. She thinks that he's here to take advantage of the village because he's a stranger, right? She's very protective of her village, and she's very protective of her loved ones, and she's very suspicious of strangers. And well, Rango's kind of strange, right? He's not just a stranger, he's a little odd to boot. So we have fight or flight, freeze or fawn. And what's interesting is in 2 out of those 4, you might even say 3 out of the 4, control is what's happening. Because there's no reason to fight unless one is motivated by the desire to control the outcomes, to control the outcome of the fight, for instance. But likewise, to be frozen by fear and to be something or someone that strikes fear into the heart of someone else such that they freeze and they are paralyzed by fear. What is that if not control? And then the 4th one, fawn. Fawn is this insidious form of fear where you become enamored or amazed, and you begin to fawn over the individual, let's say, who commands respect through fear and through control. This is very much behind the phenomenon that we can describe as nice girls and their asshole boyfriends, or the tough guy, the drifter, the loose cannon, the fifth wheel, how women very often they're attracted to the bad boy. That's it, the bad boy syndrome, where women feel attracted to the bad boy. There's a mystique about it. It's forbidden fruit. There's a danger to it. There's so much going on there, but the control dynamic, the energy dynamic, is one of fear and control. And what's playing out there is this fourth aspect of fear called fawn, where, let's face it, that woman knows that it's dangerous to go out with the bad boy. At any moment, he could cheat on her, he could leave her, he could have an angry, violent outburst, possibly even assault her physically. Like, there's a real practical danger to all of that. And yet, she risks all of that. Not necessarily because she's courageous, but because she's fawning over him. Because he's strong. Bad boys are strong, and they're self-confident, and they're decisive, and they're take charge, and they take no BS, and they're giving it to the man, right? And they're rebellious, right? Like, the James Dean Rebel Without a Cause and all that kind of stuff. And the bad boys of rock and roll, and how they're breaking all the rules and breaking convention, and they don't care what other people think, and they're living their life the way they want to, and it's this carefree, wild, anything goes attitude, and exuding that energy. And that and women can find that, yeah, it's a danger, it's a risk, but it's intriguing to them, and they can be drawn into that through this fourth way, this fawn. Other women, they turn around and they run in the other direction. They'll say, been there, done that. I don't need that kind of drama. I don't need an asshole in my life. Thank you very much. I'm not going to be taken in by the musicality, by the harsh lyrics, by the big 1980s glam rock hairstyle and the tight leather pants. I'm not going to be taken in by any of that. I know better. And they tuck tail and they go in the other direction. But other women, they get drawn into that, and they fawn over that, and they throw themselves at rock stars and musicians and bikers and bad boys of all kinds, rappers, and you name it. Right? It's all part of the culture of the bad boy culture, the bad boy persona, that character of being a bad boy. Then Rango is very much pretending to be that when he comes into town. He dreams of being the tough Western drifter, the quintessential bad boy, the spirit of the West, which is a hard land. It's a hard, harsh land. And the only one who can really master and make it all alone in such a harsh, hard land is the one that is every bit the tough buffalo hide, right? That's what it takes to survive as a lone drifter in the harshness and the incessant burning up in the incessant sunlight and the terrible sub-zero temperatures at night. It's an unforgiving place. And in an unforgiving land, the drifter would argue that one has to be uncompromising. One has to have no compassion, no forgiveness for for that harsh land. One has to be, like in a game of chess, one has to be ruthless on the board, just as our opponent, their pieces are ruthless. But there is a way to do this that's heavy and that's serious and that weighs ourselves down, so that we get bogged down in the weight of all of that, in the darkness of all of that, in the heaviness of all that. We get tangled up and entwined in the harshness of all of that. And we bring that upon ourselves when we do that. And that's what I did. I certainly did that. For the longest time, because it's very easy to slip into depression. And when you're in depression, it's very hard to be lighthearted and whimsical and crack jokes. And yeah, it's very hard to dance with the causes of depression when you're depressed. It's not easy. Or when you have no energy. Or when you see yourself having seizures on a live stream. It's very easy to kick yourself, to beat yourself up, or to get down on yourself or play the victim and say, woe is me, and I can't believe now everybody has seen me that way, or whatever. And carrying all of that weight and burden, that's pressure. That's pressure that from above. And then you have this pressure below building up underneath that. And the thing about pressure and the thing about weight and not allowing a release of that pressure through humor, through whimsy, through not taking ourselves so seriously. If we don't vent some of that, then it builds and builds and builds and builds, and eventually it blows up, it erupts. And if it does so because we are being triggered, i.e. by someone we love, by someone who's close to us, by someone who shares that same fear that we do. And remember, fear is a desire to control. And the flip side of that is that if there's a strong desire to be in control, one of the things that will trigger that fear is when somebody else comes along and tries to control us. And so you can see, you immediately get a situation of a couple of alpha bulls in a china shop. If you've ever seen the bulls butting heads, each one wants to be in control. And that's fear and fear. And so when we can be triggered by other people's fear, and how we are triggered may be that, for instance, I knew someone who exploited my fear and was able to control and manipulate my fear by triggering it such that it completely drained me of all energy. And by doing so, she then could manipulate me, or at least tried to manipulate me. Because one of the things about fear and control, about the chameleon, like I was saying, the chameleon is a hunter and a master of disguise and an opportunist. The chameleon will sit on that branch and blend into the background and wait there for hours and hours without moving, just using his eyes and scanning and paying attention and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting until an unsuspecting insect comes by and then gets him with his tongue. That's fear. That's that control. That's a kind of an insidious patience that it has. But if we're weighing it down, if we're avoiding it, if we're locking it away, if we're repressing it, and we're repressing it with this weightiness, this heaviness, because we're so afraid of it getting hold of us or taking control of us. So we want to be in control of it, and we think that suppressing it is the answer. Well, fear doesn't like to be controlled, and fear doesn't like to be repressed. And if it's left to its own devices, it'll build and build and build because it's patient. And it'll slowly grow in strength and grow in strength and grow in strength. And how does it grow? With all those little micro triggers that we experience. And that triggers are these little aggressions of frustration, these little judgments, these little annoyances, these little expressions of our need to be in control of a situation. And it could be that we spend an entire day in a very public place, in a shopping mall, a very busy shopping mall. And all day we're dealing with the crowds, the noise, the high prices, and just one thing after another, after another, after another, after another, that are like these little annoyances or little illustrations of where society is at the end of the Kali Yuga. And living with an Attlas project about wanting to change things, wanting to make the world a better place. And so the fear takes advantage of that. The fear exploits that. And so everything that we see that, it doesn't need to be that way, or it shouldn't be that way. These little micro judgments, these little condemnations, going through life, going through a day in a busy mall and watching people, eating garbage and going crazy for sweatshop rags and one thing after another, all the superficiality, all the materialism, all these people, they're sleepwalking through life, and it just goes one thing after another, and then the annoying people who are yelling into their cell phones in your ear, and then there's the traffic getting there and getting back, and then if the rain that was falling down because it was cold, and the weather forecast said it was going to be nice, but then it turned out to be rainy and cold all day. And then it's just one thing after another, after another, after another. And it's building up, it's building up, it's building up. If we don't approach all of it with a, it is what it is attitude. It is what it is. We don't have to judge it. It's not good or bad. It just is. It is what it is. And it has to be that way. And it has to be that way for our sake too. Because it's all that darkness, it's all that shadow that's holding up a mirror to ourselves. You see, fear likes to be in control. And fear is afraid, is insecure. And one of the ways that fear finds validation in itself is by judging and condemning others. Oh, well, I'm not like them, and I'm not like that person. And look at that fat person over there, and look at that person who's addicted to this or addicted to that, or it's like at least I'm not like that. At least I'm not like that. I have my faults, but at least I'm not like that. Right? It's a validation. It's propping ourselves up by not necessarily putting others down, but looking at others and being an opportunist and saying, whoever they are, whatever they are, they're down there. They're the little people. They're the zombies of the zombie apocalypse. And we're up here somewhere, right? We're looking down on them like a chameleon up in a tree, looking down on all the little insects that we're picking off one by one with our turret eyes. But do we have the real courage to turn one of those eyes in on ourselves? Like you've heard me say many, many, many times. One eye in and one eye out. Self-observation, self-remembering. Are we able to hone in that targeting system like the chameleon has? And are we able to apply that small aperture lens that gives us a great depth of field? Are we able to take that lens and point it inward on ourselves and look deep, deep into ourselves? Fear and control is precisely what prevents us from doing that. Because it's a chameleon, it's camouflaged, it's hiding. And it wants to remain hidden. And it's a predator. It wants to be able to strike from its hidden position. So we don't even know what hit us. Now, the catch with all of this is, at the end of the day, a chameleon is a really comical animal. It's very whimsical, actually. It's when you really spend some time with a chameleon, you realize just how whimsical and light-hearted the whole chameleon phenomenon is. And the movie Rango personifies that and plays it up in this comedy of errors that has its action and adventure and drama and all those other elements. But you can't really get too caught up in the drama of it all when your protagonist looks like that and he's a chameleon in a Hawaiian shirt. You can't really be afraid of a chameleon, or at least we can't. If you're a cricket, you can be afraid of a chameleon. You have every right to be afraid of a chameleon if you're a cricket. And believe me, the insects are afraid of the chameleon. But we're not an insect. And as I said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. That's a trap. That's a trick. You can't fear yourself out of fear, and you can't control your way out of fear. You can't force your way out of fear, and by force of will. So how do you get out of fear? You face your fear, but not as Rango, not as this chameleon. You realize that this chameleon, this character, this Rango, this is you. This is me. It's not some other entity. It's where we got to last week when we talked about facing Satan. Satan is in the mirror. And Attlas, myself, my true self, he's here. You can see him in these eyes. And hopefully you can hear him in these words. It's hard to see the soul in the eyes of a chameleon. It's hard to see the soul in Rango's eyes because the pupils are so small. The eyes are the lenses are so small. But look at Beans. Look at her eyes. Right? They're yeah, it's true. The retina and the pupils are they're small, but they're how much bigger they are. Eyes are the windows to the soul, and eyes tell us so much about a character. And actors, or any character for that matter, communicate so much through the eyes. And that's as true for computer animation as it is for hand-drawn animation. And you will notice this if you go back and watch some of your favorite cartoons, and you will realize what an important part the eyes play in any kind of characterization. And why, for example, women wear makeup around the eyes, and other cultures have done so with eyeshadow and eyeliner and doing permanent tattoos around the eye, like permanent pigmentation of eyeliner and whatnot, in order to accentuate and amplify the eyes and draw your focus into the eyes. The eyes are the windows of the soul. Con artists and black magicians use eye contact as a very effective tool to achieve their manipulation, their psychological manipulation. So if you want to know someone's soul, you look in their eyes. And if you want to know your own soul, if you want to know God within you, you look in the mirror and you look in the eyes. Recognizing that if you want to know your demons, your dark side, you need to look no further than the same reflection in the mirror. But this is not an invitation to be afraid. And this is not an invitation to take that image and encase it in concrete and then put it around your neck with a chain and start dragging it around with you, this heavy self-image of myself as a what? Myself as a demon, myself as a whatever. This heaviness, this heavy load. Because I did that for a long, long time. I'm guilty of that. And not only that, I'm guilty of imparting that kind of energy in past live streams, including last week. But then this week, and its learning opportunity that was afforded me, that was quite painful and quite disturbing and quite chaotic, but also very beautiful and redemptive and rewarding. I'm here to tell you now that, it doesn't have to be this great big winged, flaming, smoking, snarling, fire-breathing Balrog. You want to know what your fear looks like? You're looking at him. Or you're looking at her. There's fear. You're looking at the face of fear. That's fear. That's the face of fear. When you have doubt, when you have insecurity, when you look in the mirror and you have body dysmorphia, which is a fancy euphemistic way of saying you don't like the way your body looks. You think you're too fat, or you're too thin, or you're too thick here, or you're too skinny there, or this is wrong, or that's wrong, or, hairline is receding, or hair is going gray, or, I got more wrinkles under my eyes, or I've got these spots or those spots. You know what I mean? It's all body dysmorphia. It's all identification with the physical vessel. And when you see that image of you looking back in the mirror, embodying that dysmorphia, these ill feelings are being reflected back at you, your ill feelings toward yourself, and you want desperately to control and change the situation. You're afraid that that's the way you look, or what do other people think of me? You put on your clothes and say, oh, these clothes are out of style. What are people going to think of me? I got to go to a wedding, but all my dresses are 5 years old. What are people going to say? They're going to say I'm poor. They're going to say I have no style, or I don't fit into this dress well anymore. Everybody's going to say that I've gained weight. Everybody's going to say I used to be so beautiful when I was in my teens, when I was in my 20s, but now I'm in my late 30s or 40s or 50s. And now I look in the mirror and I only see the pale echoes of what I used to be like, or what I thought I was going to age like. But now the mirror shows me something completely different. And all of that is there to show us something, to teach us something. It's exactly what we need to see. And what we're feeling about it is exactly what we need to feel, to show us, to remind us that we're just behaving like Rango. We're identified with this part that we're playing in a movie. And we're worried about our reputation. We're worried about getting our star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That's a allegory. That's a symbol of fame and fortune, of the approval of others, of validation of others. That's why artists, actors, musicians, performers, directors want to get their star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, because it's there for all posterity. Or they want their Oscar, or they want their Emmy. They want the recognition of their peers, and they want the love and adoration of the public. And yes, pride comes into it. There's no question. Pride is a part of that. Narcissism is a part of that. But the insecurity and the desire for that validation, that's fear. Because narcissism and pride is really loving yourself too much. And you can love yourself too much and not give a rat's ass what other people think. And you know lots of narcissists. You have known narcissists, public ones, famous ones, and also personally in your life, maybe even in your own family. You know what narcissists are like. They're not necessarily after fame or fortune. They don't necessarily care what anybody else thinks. The only thing that matters to them is what they think. And they know how fantastic they are, or they know how terrible they are. The self-loathing. Because people who are addicted and everything else, and it's self-loathing. It's the same pride. We've talked about this many times. How pride and shame are two sides of the same coin. In the same way that fear and control are two sides of the same coin. It's all just fear. So when you have those moments, when you look in the mirror and you say, oh gosh, just ridiculous, right? You know, see Rango, see beans. You don't have to see the big Balrog. You don't have to see the terrible demon. This is a real seed change for this channel, for my teachings moving forward. Because I don't want in any way, shape, or form to contribute to your fear. I don't want to make things worse for you by talking about demons and devils and evil and this and that and the other thing, because guess what? It's all just a drama. It's all just a play. It's all just pieces on a chessboard. It's just a game. And games are supposed to be fun. The challenge, we take on the challenge not because it's excruciating, but because it's invigorating. And more importantly, it's sustaining. I mentioned to you back on Friday, the 4th of May, I had a Good Friday experience. And I shared with you the events on that day that I experienced that clearly communicated certain things. And I also told you that I received very, very, very powerful information on that day in meditation. And I have been workshopping, I've been working through, contemplating, journaling, workshopping, meditating, and all of this has been working through me in my life ever since. Next week, on Sunday, will be June 2nd. And I'll be turning 51 years old. And all of this is coalescing, coagulating, synthesizing into a profound and life-altering, and I dare say, world-altering truth. A shareable, expressible, accessible, existential truth. And it's relating not just to the tree of life, but also to the Tao, to the Tao itself. And without giving anything away or jumping the gun, because I don't want to speak out of turn, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, and I don't want to serve up anything that's just half baked, right? So you'll have to wait till next Sunday. And even then, who knows if the cake is going to be ready? Maybe I need more time. On the other hand, if the last 72 hours and the last 3 weeks keep unfolding as the previous 3 weeks and the previous 3 days have unfolded, then what's coming together, what's coalescing in a very meaningful, practical way, I will be able to share with you next Sunday. And I say I. Some of you may have noticed that. I still say we here and there because it's habit, right? I've been saying we for so long now that, you know, I'll mix it up and I'll say we sometimes, but today I've really been trying hard to be conscious and say we only when I mean us, all of you and myself, and even beyond that, collectively, all of us in humanity, or all of us who suffer from fear, all of us who have suffered with anxiety, with insecurity, with issues around our confidence, self-confidence. There's a collective we there. In fact, as I've mentioned in the past, COVID was not a global pandemic of viral origin and yada, yada, yada. That's the cover story. What that entire scenario was a global referendum on fear. Fear is the real disease. Fear is the real killer. Or as Frank Herbert said in Dune, fear is the mind killer. Yes, the mind killer, the manas killer. We are hume and manas and being. And if fear is the mind killer, that's the manas, that's the mind of our being, that's the mind of God. And if fear is the mind killer, that's what keeps us stuck in our hume, in our mortal, physical, animal, emotional, rational, intellectual vessel. We get stuck in our hume if we're divided and separated from our manas, from our being. And fear wants to do that. Why? Because fear doesn't want the being to be in control of us. Fear wants to control us. So what better way than to appreciably and practically separate us? Fear is the mind killer. Fear kills the manas. Cuts the connection and creates the separation. And when you feel into the word separation, and if you write it out on a piece of paper, separation, and then you look at what it takes to turn separation. You know what? Well, let's see if we can do it this way. Hang on. Let me just get my drawing tablet out. There it is. Okay. Let's see if I can make myself smaller here. Let's see if we can do this. Where's my... Okay. Pen. Let's see if this works. Whoops. Okay. So the word separation, is that showing up for you guys? Yeah. So separation. You take this P, okay, and you invert it. And you take this S and you move it over. and you add an I, now we all know that this is not how you spell desperation. There is no I. There is no I in desperation. But we know that there is an I in desperation because it's the I that feels desperation. The soul, the being, the essence doesn't feel desperation. And this is the relationship between separation and desperation. One letter goes here, and one letter goes there, and the I rears its ugly head. And what was whole and together in one is despaired. It's separated, despaired, and it's despair, the suffering, the agony. And all of this is fear. And you can see it in the eyes of these characters, and you can feel it in their performances. As lighthearted and funny as the film is, it all comes across. And the film's name is Rango, which is funny because, you know, it sounds like it almost could be Rambo, but he's no Rambo. And ran and go, this both relates to running away. This is fleeing, right? This is all fear. And all of the psychological manipulation, the control, and then we have over here with Beans, we have freeze. And then the townsfolk, the rest of the film, the townsfolk, they suffer from fawn. But there's fight, there's flight, there's fear, and there's fawn, and it's all there in the movie Rango. Tiffany says, what you're talking about, fear, takes me back to the bliss lesson, which I hold dear. Thank you. Bliss doesn't reside in the same space as fear. And I find that comforting. No, in fact, bliss is what you find when you face your fear. Bliss is remember that when we talked about finding your bliss, we were talking about it as one does in the context of Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And hang on one second, we're gonna do something really quick. When we talk about the hero's journey, and the hero has to, has to leave the comfort and security of his home, of wherever he is, of his home base. Remember when we've been talking about when we talk about the alm of life, and one of the things that we did is we use the baseball analogy. And again, I was explaining we do this upside down simply because in the alm of life we descend into the darkness and we return into the light. So that's why we do it in this direction, which again is backwards for baseball, because in baseball you would be running in the other direction. But we do it backwards and upside down because this is how it best relates to the alm of life and the heroic journey, where we call this, metaphorically, we call it hell. And this is the return, right? Or this was the home, the return home. And in baseball, it's home base. And that's first base, second base, third base, right? And so, but this movement, and actually we should draw that going all the way back up to there. Okay. This movement, what drives us forward is bliss. It's the opportunity to, in the baseball analogy, to score a run. And the thrill of that and the value of that. To complete one revolution of the alm of life, to get around the bases and score a run, is to be one step ahead, one step further along in winning the game of life. And for us, that game of life is fulfilling what we came here to do. But no one is, or very, very few times is it where this is easy, right? Playing baseball is not easy from a certain standpoint, from a certain point of view. Getting a run isn't easy because let's face it, let's be honest with ourselves. Where did my, oh, there they are. You know, you have players out here. You have the opposing team. And this opposing team, including the pitcher, what are they trying to do? They're trying to get you out. The pitcher's trying to get a strikeout, and all the other players on the opposing team and in the outfield, they're trying to get an out. They're trying to either catch the ball, right, a fly ball, and get the umpire to call you out, or they're trying to tag you with the ball as you run the bases. As you are trying to get your run, they are trying to get you out. So there's a threat of that. So when you step up to the plate, you know, Casey at the bat, staring down the pitcher, the opposing pitcher, and staring down the opposing team. I can't remember how many players there are in a baseball game, but anyway, it's not just the pitcher, it's the whole opposing team. And you're standing there at the plate and you're like, okay, first of all, I got to get past the pitcher. I got to get past his curveball or his fastball or his screwball or his his drop ball or whatever, all these pitches. And the better the pitcher, the more terrifying the that can be, because there are some pitchers who can be really terrifying to batters. Sorry, I just have to reply to this. It's Sunday. There's a barbecue. Somebody is coming to pick me up, and they just sent. I asked them to send me a message when they're leaving so that I can time and wrap up today's live stream accordingly. So there's no rush, but I just needed the heads up, because I didn't want to cancel today's live stream just because of a barbecue. Just like next week, it might be another shorter session because it's my birthday and family wants to do things. So, but I told them, I said, I'm not canceling the live stream. So we have to do it either before or after or whatever. But my Sunday afternoons are for me. So on my birthday, I'm doing what I want to do on my birthday, which is spend time with all of you, right? And that's next Sunday. And everything that we're talking about here, and everything that we're talking about, everything I'm showing you, and what I have yet to show you, but what I've already seen. Without building up expectations too high. I don't want to disappoint. It's not my intention to disappoint. But having said that, next Sunday, you see, I have this tradition. On birthdays of big milestones. Oh, Tiffany says, happy birthday. Thank you, Tiffany. Save the cake for next week. For example, when I turned 30, that was 2 decades ago. Can you believe that? 2 decades ago. When you say it like that, it's hard to believe. When I turned 30, I held a big party and I baked 5 Hungarian style pizzas, and I had over 30 people over. I lived in a condo at the time, and I booked the party room, and that party room had a double oven. So at one time I had 3 pizzas, and these were all homemade. I made the dough and everything. It's like I made it according to my great grandmother's recipe for homemade Hungarian style pizza. And I threw a party, not for myself, but for all my friends. It was like tradition I started, like I told you, at New Year's, for example, that New Year's I would make all of these homemade, handmade cards, but it was all collage, and it was all personalized with inside jokes and things from popular culture that I knew that each one of my friends would appreciate. Everything was personalized and customized to them, their personalities, their lives, what they were going through, what was happening, and so it was part of my giving nature and part of my artistic nature, and being Hungarian and wanting to host and wanting to please and wanting to serve. So I began I'm not able to do it every year, but in my own small way this year, I hope and I plan to be able to deliver all of you something which is truly unique, and that I don't know if it could only have come through me, but it could only come from one source. And it just happens to be coming through me right now. And it's why I'm here. And frankly, it's why you're here. And I hope that next week we can pick up and continue along today's conversation, but bring it to a whole different level of understanding. Because I can talk about me facing my fear and this and that and control and so on, and all till I'm blue in the face. But is that really going to be beneficial and helpful to you when you confront your fear? When you lose your temper because somebody is trying to step on your toes, or somebody's trying to tell you what to do, and you haven't slept well, so you're short on sleep, you're low on energy, you're low on willpower, in other words, and you maybe just did a workout and you're jazzed, or maybe you had a cup of coffee and maybe you had a little bit too much caffeine or something, and you're a little bit on edge, and then someone comes along and starts getting in your face and telling you, why are you doing it this way? Do it a different way. Do it the way I tell you. You never listen to me. Blah, 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 right? And they start laying into you. And you know what that's like when you're weak, when you're tired. You've got very low patience, very low willpower, very low energy to resist and use your willpower to avoid or deflect or dodge your own fear, and somebody's coming along and pressing your buttons, right? We've all been there. It's happened to all of us. And what happens? We lose our temper. Fear becomes anger. And it just starts pouring out of us because it's like, and we tell them like, don't try to control me. Don't tell me what to do. Right? Because that's our fear. That's our need to be in control. And by being triggered that way and us reacting that way, it is fear that is reacting through us. It's exploiting that situation and our moment of weakness. And it's showing us just how much work we still have to do. How that predator, how well camouflaged and hidden in the foliage of our subconscious mind that predator is. That the minute it feels threatened, out comes the tongue lashing, right? And we're giving someone we love, a family member, a tongue lashing. It's our fear. It's our chameleon doing that. All they did was give us an irritating cricket that was buzzing and was irritating us and that was triggering our chameleon to lash out. It doesn't have to be a Balrog. It doesn't have to be a demon. It's just a chameleon. One of nature's most whimsical reptiles. It's it would be comical, and it has to be comical. We have to be lighthearted about it. We have to be able to laugh at ourselves. We have to be able to laugh at the situation. Unfortunately, if we do go through life with that weightiness and that heaviness, and we take ourselves so seriously, so that instead of saying to the person who's being irritating and getting in our face and trying to control us, instead of us making a joke about it and deflecting and being light on our feet and dancing, right? Just tap dancing out of the way. Right? If we're heavy and we're weighed down and everything else about it, then when they get in our face, we drop the hammer on them. We lash out with venom. Now, chameleons aren't venomous, but hey, you know as well as I do how quickly our words can become venomous and leave a mark and sting and poison and we can spew toxic goo like those crazy dinosaurs from Jurassic Park. So that's up to us. How we face our fear and how we treat not just our fear, but our many egos, our individual Satan moving forward. Is Satan really this monster, this terrible Balrog, this overwhelming, overbearing, monstrous, heavy, big, lumbering, terrible Goliath? Or is it just a small little whimsical chameleon just hiding in the tree, waiting for whatever little irritation, whatever little bug, right, comes along that gives it an excuse to lash out? And when it's not doing that, its eyes are twitching and looking around all the time for what to be afraid of, right? For where the predator is and for where the prey is, right? What I have to be afraid of and what can I control, right? He's got two eyes, one for fear and one for control. One's got this depth of view and he remains hidden. That's a chameleon, but he's just an actor. And he's a wannabe hero, but he's spineless. He's weak. And he's really a joke. So can we approach ourselves that way? Like with that self-deprecating humor that Charlie Chaplin had when he created the character of the tramp. or that Buster Keaton had, or that many, many comical actors, like Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson when he created Mr. Bean, and so many other characters that have been made for the sake of making people laugh. They're very human. They have lots of emotion. They have lots of, we can identify them, but it's comedy. It's light. We're made to laugh at ourselves. We're made to laugh at the human condition and laugh at our foibles because it's all a game. It's like chess. You don't cry when your pieces are taken. You don't sit there in anguish when your pieces are taken. It's a game. But if you go through life seeing everyone and everything from the point of view of the pieces, then your opponent's queen is a monstrous Goliath that's coming to get you. But our Divine Mother is not a monster. Our Divine Mother gives us everything that we need and nothing more. Our Divine Mother sustains us on our journey. Our Divine Mother gives us the subsistence, the sustenance and subsistence in order that we may be here and now in this existence. And if we make of her a terrible demon, a terrible Medusa who's trying to turn us to stone and add us to her collection of heroes that she has defeated, if that's the way we see her, well then, we're always going to be confrontational with ourselves and we're always going to be afraid of ourselves. We're going to fear. And we're never going to be able to look her in the eyes for fear of being turned to stone. And that's why we need a mirror to look into, to see our own reflection and see Medusa reflected back at us with our own reflection and understand and comprehend. And we're going to get much more into all of this next week. And it won't just be from the point of view of fear. It's going to be from the point of view of the whole of our shadow, the whole of our Satan, and all of our egos, all of the obstacles and the foibles and the defects and the vices that make up the challenge that we face on our journey. The players on the opposing team, if you will, in the baseball game that we are here playing, as we round the bases again and again and again and again and tally up the runs and tally up the score as we pursue our bliss. So we're going to be getting into much more of this next week, and hopefully all of this will crystallize and synthesize in a way that I hope will be as revelatory for you as it has been for me, as all of this has been unfolding since Friday, May 4th, since my Good Friday. So that's something to look forward to next week. I think it's probably best if I open it up to questions and or comments. So then we can wrap this up a little bit sooner today, because my ride is going to be arriving fairly soon. I don't want them to wait too much. I still have to change and do some of that kind of stuff. So Benjamin Ochoa says, the point isn't to find bliss and stay there. We always have bliss here and there, but darkness is what's part of the whole process. Heard that in a message yesterday. It's pretty good. So this is what we're going to be getting into more next week, Benjamin, because the Tao is what it is, and you cannot have existence without both halves of the Tao. You need both. It just is what it is. And that means you need the light and the dark, and the relationship between light and dark. And, if I showed you very quickly, very briefly, you've seen some of this PowerPoint presentation before, but you see this, you see the orientation of light and dark here. Yeah, you've got the polarity, you've got the symmetry, you've got duality, but what's missing? What don't you have? Right? There's no movement. There's no interaction. These two things they might as well be separate. And there's no motion. There's nothing kinetic. It's not alive. There's no existence. It's stagnation. So through a process that I've walked you through before, we end up with separation, division, and it's mathematical, and we're going to show you all this stuff eventually, but then we end up, right, as we get motion, as we get separation, and we get resistance, and we get subsistence, and we get revolution, right? We get this. The opposed potentialities of the universe. Involution, evolution, devolution, involution, and revolution. And you also have other dualities like radiation and gravitation. You have the law of duality and polarity that seeks the dialectic, but you also have the law of attraction that seeks unity. Right? I'm just highlighting what, I'll just highlight what, oh, no, I didn't want to do that. Sometimes Microsoft, you can be very, okay. Yeah, so you have what seeks the dialectic, and then you have what seeks unity. And then the law of three, according to Gurdjieff, you have affirmation, negation, and reconciliation, right? Affirmation in the white, negation in the black, and the reconciliation in the Tao, because it's white and black now working together. But what you also have, which is not reflected in this slide, what you also have is, this is coming together in the tree of life, by the way, and so we got a lot to work on. And then we end up from the flower of life, we end up with the vowels of the chakras, and you also end up with all the sephira of the tree of life, and then the mathematics of all of this. But then what I want to get to is, right, so this is all still a work in progress, right? Where are we going with this? Where are we trying to get to? I think we discard. Let's get to, we want to get to this slide here. Again, work in progress, but here's what we want to get to. These words are not finalized. Okay, this is a work in progress. However, in the center of everything, in the 0 point of the creation of the entire universe, we have the word that I choose, stance, to stand, to be. It's right smack in the middle of everything. And all of these different words relate to the different sephira of the tree of life. And you see, on the light, we have existence, and on the dark, we have subsistence. And the light that's in the dark, okay, here requires persistence. And the stance, because stance means to stand, and the suffix ance or ence means to be instant, an instance. In other words, to be in the moment of being, and to persist in that, and to persist against the resistance, which is another word that we've been working with, and to persist in substance. This is Malkut on the tree of life, also known as the kingdom of substance, the three-dimensional world. That's substance. But this is stance. This is the sixth dimension. This is the causal body. And this is willpower. That's the stance. When we talk about integrity and being true to ourself and having integrity, it's following the will of God. Stance is the will of God. Because all of this stuff up here, the quintessence and the resplendence, this is the mergence, this is the crown, this is Keter and Hokmah, this is the Christ, is resplendence, right? This is the fire of fire and the light of lights. And this is the Holy Spirit and Divine Mother. This is the Divine Mother, who is all about what? Assistance. But she's not just about assistance, she is also all about subsistence. And she descends on the tree of life into the ninth sphere, which is here, the sexual force. So all of this is coming together, and where I'm experiencing what you might call a coalescence. This whole dynamic, right, of intelligence and conscience and quintessence, and in order to coalesce, this is called da'at in Hebrew, and we call it gnosis. The crystallization, the formation, the bringing into formation, bringing into form new experiential knowledge. That's the dark spot in the light. That's the whole point and purpose of existence, for God to know himself, to crystallize, to coalesce. And that's how you transmute substance and nonsense and intelligence into, through existence and through subsistence, through assistance, we get to coalescence. And the mergence, the crown, and above is the absolute. It's the coming, it's the return home. It's the coming together of everything. That's what we're working on. And that's what we hope to be able to have more fleshed out for all of you next week in time for our birthday. So Benjamin says, thanks, Atlas. Have a nice barbecue. And Benjamin also says it's going to be a good lecture. Well, we hope so. We hope it's going to be a worthwhile birthday present for me and also a worthwhile gift to you. That's my tradition, that I don't like to be the only one having gifts on my birthday. I want to give, I want to serve others on my birthday. That's because that's what brings me the greatest joy. And I'll share more with you next week also about why I don't need to say we anymore. I am Atlas. I am Atlas. That's the truth of it. I'm not perfect. I'm not perfected. I'm still in formation. And yeah, now and then Attila is still going to get in the way, right? But I no longer, after everything that's been unfolding in the past month, I no longer identify as, and I no longer accept a position that allows me too easily to fall into desperation. Because when I identify as Attila, the mortal self, that's when the fear creeps in, and I'm afraid of failing and afraid of letting down Attlas, and what's more, letting down Allux, the Christ. And fear in me exploits that. And when you see that spazzy, desperate Attila, who's desperate to try to make his point, and he's desperate for you guys to try to hear and understand what he's trying to say, well, that's fear. That's Attila's fear. That's my fear. But Attlas has no fear. I can step back and see all of that happening and say, ah, there's the chameleon. There's Rango. There's Rango. There's Beans. But there's Rango. Look at him, crazy with his Hawaiian shirt and everything. Look at him, silly bugger. Right? He's hilarious. He's hilarious. He's whimsical. He's comical. I don't have to be afraid of this guy. Sure, you don't want a sticky chameleon tongue on your face. Sure, nobody wants sticky chameleon tongue on their face. But okay, but it's still just a chameleon. It's still just a whimsical, comical guy with his turret eyes, and he's just afraid. He's just subconscious, and he's just insecure, and he's, he wants his validation, and he's afraid of letting the townspeople down, right? But he's desperate to be the hero. I'm not desperate to be anything. I am Attlas. I am doing what I came here to do. I am on time, and I'm not going to run out of time. And the miracles that have been unfolding in my life, and since Good Friday, and Good Friday itself, and everything that's been unfolding in my life, has so filled me with true faith to a level that I've never experienced before. And I've been shown, it's been proven to me. I have no reason to doubt anymore. I have no reason to second guess. And I have no reason to be afraid that I'm not good enough, or that I'm failing, or that I'm letting people down. But if I allow myself to fall into the trap of desperation and being afraid of failure, well, then I'm in separation, and then I really do run the risk of failing. I really do run the risk of letting people down, right? There's the rub. That's how clever and insidious fear can be. With its whimsical look and its Hawaiian shirt, that's still a predator. That's still a chameleon. And chameleons are masters of disguise, which is why the article that we wrote on fear, and that we're going to somehow be incorporating that same title into the book that we're going to be writing about fear. The article's name was Face Your Fear's Many Faces, or Face the Many Faces of Fear. It was playing on the words facing fear, and the fact that it's not just one face of fear we have to face, but many, because fear is clever. It's insidious. He's a chameleon. He's a master of disguise. He's a master of characters. He's an actor, right? And here it is. Oh, goodness. It says we couldn't find this page. Well, that's strange. Huh. Wow, is it possible? No, there it is. Okay. Anyway, so this is the article on the blog, and I'll get the link from this URL from the top of the page, so you know this one was going to work. So just go to atlasallux.com and click on info and go down to blog. And this article, Face Your Fears, Many Faces. This was from, does it have a date on this? Yeah. Wow, that was 4 years ago. No, 5 years ago. But this is the foundation, this is the nucleus for the book that we're going to be writing about fear. And somehow we're going to incorporate that facing your fear. We're going to be doing that, hopefully not in a clever way, but in a functional, useful way. And if we go to books, we actually have a section talking about this book. Right? We have it right here, coming next. And this is a working title. I'm not sure if this is what we're going to go with, but it's another catchy title. It's the kind of title that you might see like popping off of a screen, like it might jump out at you, right? F fear. There's a little slideshow, like some of the different, facets of fear and everything else. And then under here we have a description, and in the background you see all these masks, all these like these demon masks or death masks or whatever, and but they're all scary masks, in other words. And these are the many faces of fear. And if they're not scary masks, then they're imposing, controlling masks. And so as you can see, this is not the last time we're going to be talking about fear, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys know the progress and the transformation that's taking place, so that you don't have to be afraid of, and I'm going to do my best not to encourage anyone, including all of you, to fall into that trap of heaviness and weightiness and taking ourselves too seriously and getting bogged down and overwhelmed by, oh my God, it's fear, it's a demon, it's this, it's that, it's all of it, right? Because no, we don't want to fear. That's a trap. That's a trick. We don't want to listen to FDR's advice that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. We don't want to be afraid of fear. He's just a chameleon, right? He's just trying to make it as an actor in a 2-bit dust bowl in the middle of the desert. And he's trying to be a hero in the eyes of he wants the validation of the townsfolk. He wants to be seen as something other than how he sees himself. That's all. So there's the link to the article, atlasallux.com/post/face your fears, many faces. Does anybody have any more comments or questions before we bid you all a good day? I'll give you guys a chance to type if you want to type. If there are no questions or no more comments, I want to thank you once again from the bottom of my heart, as I do every week, for you taking the time to be here, taking the time and making the investment in yourself. There's no greater investment that we can make than the investment in our immortal soul, spiritual investment. Because one way or another, everything that we're identified with and attached to in this life, sooner or later, one way or another, it's going away. So if we can commit ourselves and make an investment in ourself, the immortal aspect of ourself, and make an investment in what truly matters to us, what truly matters to others, ultimately, what truly matters to humanity and everyone we meet, no matter how mechanical or materialistic they may be or think they are. Everyone has a soul, and if that soul is trapped inside a mechanical automaton that's living in separation and in desperation, right? Because that's why all these millionaires and billionaires and all these hoarders and all these addictions that people have, and they want more and more and more and more and more. It's never enough, and they want unlimited growth and all this nonsense. It's all this accumulation. Well, that's like a squirrel or a blue jay hoarding nuts. That's all that is. And why do they do that? Well, because they want to be sure that they have enough to eat through the winter. And they go about it in that that little kind of spazzy animal way that squirrels can be when they're collecting nuts, or when blue jays are collecting peanuts, because blue jays, they squawk, they're really loud. In any case, that's it for me. That's it for this week. Look forward to seeing you all next week. And as always, take care, be well, have a great week, and inferential peace. God bless everyone. Goodbye.